It's still loading. Give it a, I'll tell you when it's ready. We're streaming.
Okay. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order, May 19 budget workshop. And Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Present.
Okay, Judge Clymer.
Here. All right, and we've got several things on the agenda. The first on the agenda is the Craig County Sheriff. He's here with us. Steve and I met with the sheriff yesterday by Zoom and went over some of these things. Now's the opportunity to go over them more in depth if we see the need. So, Steve, you want to start off with it? And the sheriff, how you want to see? I've got no preference.
Let me share the screen and then I'll start and then the sheriff can jump in. All right. Does everyone see that spreadsheet?
Yes.
This is getting repetitive. Like with all the other departments, we're advising everyone to, because of the coronavirus crisis, to keep budgets flat. And again, the crisis isn't the increased spending that we're doing as a result of our response to the virus. While we have spent some money, those funds relative to our entire budget are rather modest. It's the slow moving issue of what will it do to revenue, particularly occupational numbers. As we discussed yesterday with the sheriff, yes, there are pay issues and other issues in the sheriff's department we would like to begin solving, but we are not really going to know the full extent of what the coronavirus is going to do to erode our revenues. And we don't begin to get a good sense of that until we start collecting quarterly payroll taxes. And it's the fourth quarter of this fiscal year, the second quarter of this calendar year, where that comes into effect. And those collections for that last quarter, we don't get them start getting them until July. So we'll be into the next fiscal year. So with all that, our instructions have been to, outside of the COLA and all of the other pay adjustments, that we're going to keep budgets flat, and then we will have to be making adjustments as they occur during the fiscal year. Not the most optimum way to do it, but the way we're going to have to do it in this coming fiscal year. So what you see before you is and flat in our world is a 7% increase when we make all the necessary adjustments to pay and fixing other issues in the budget. And there's some significant ones we're going to highlight when we work from top to bottom. Like you will see for the first time in a long time, the issue of vehicles in the budget for the sheriff. I remember 20 years ago when the sheriff had a vehicle line item budget in the fiscal court removed it and took control of the budget. And that was really for timing reasons. There was no purchase order system, and it was an issue whereby we were trying to control or time. That's really less so of an issue now, and it doesn't really, when we buy cars out of the general fund and use them in this fund, it doesn't really show the true cost of the department. So part of that 7% increase is we're putting in a vehicle number this year for the first time in many years. We've been buying vehicles, obviously, but we've been buying them out of the general fund. So we're going to actually put them in the sheriff. We're proposing to put them in the sheriff's budget this year, and it looks like a big increase to the sheriff's budget, but it's really not, because we just moved it from another area. Other than that, everything remains fairly status quo. I will invite the sheriff at this point to make his comments about the budget and what he wants to get done next year.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit of a redundancy here. I think if you all recall last year when we met about the same time, I proposed that there was two main goals that I had that I felt was a necessity for not only our agency, but the citizens of McCracken County. And those two goals was to ultimately, during this 4-year period, somehow with money permitting, to increase our deputies by 3. I went over the details of that, what that could do for not only the department, but also the citizens in the county. Just briefly to remind you of that, that would enable us to go to a 4-10 shift. I think that is a lot of agencies are going there. More and more agencies are doing that. It's a hiring and retention incentive. It provides that additional day off for the deputies to decompress and provide more effective performance during their work days. On average, that would enable us to double the number of units that are out, especially during shift overlaps, which are peak call volume times, and would enable units to be assigned to directed patrol details to combat some of our higher crime areas and to reduce crime and make those areas safer. For the citizens, I think the importance is it's going to provide a more balanced law enforcement presence across the whole county, which is going to equate to a quicker response to the citizens' call. I think it's going to ultimately reduce liability due to shorter responses and not having to go cross county in emergency situations. And I think that we will see ultimately a reasonable fuel savings as a result of that, and less mileage on vehicles, and ultimately increase proactivity and efficiency. The second goal that I had is to try to bridge that gap that we currently face with several other agencies in terms of pay. Right now, with the Paducah City's increase, we are on the average of about a $15,000, in excess of a $15,000 difference. We just recently lost one officer to the city for a significant pay increase, and another one to a rural county with almost an equal pay and very, very little increase, especially for the call volume and the responsibilities that he's had. I maintain that is an area of importance because I think it's important for you all to understand that we've got right now a total of 16 deputy sheriffs that can retire over the next 2 years. And law enforcement has become a less favorable career. There's less interest all across the nation. There's fewer applicants. So I think it's important for us to work together to do all that we can to ensure that we're able to hire and retain the most qualified officers. I think the citizens deserve that. And, it's our responsibility to try to, do what we can to try to make that possible. So I don't have a number. Last year, I proposed some numbers as far as kind of a 4-year plan to try to help bridge that gap. You gentlemen are in difficult positions to have to sit at the table and to figure out where all these dollars go. I recognize that in our current COVID crisis, it's difficult to project where that money may end up. So I would only ask that to please revisit this in this fourth quarter and do the right thing and do all that you can for these guys and these men and women that are out here on the front lines. As far as the vehicles, I'm seeing here for the first time the money that was put in there. Am I seeing that right, Steve? You're looking at 180,000 for vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. Our vehicle situation last year, there was, I brought to your all's attention about 13 vehicles that was basically in the 90,000 plus mile range. Our call volume, the size of our county, on average, it's probably in between 125 to even upwards of 150 miles per shift. So averaging that out, it don't take us but about 3 to 3.5 years to quickly near that 100,000 mile mark. And ultimately that cuts into our vehicle maintenance line item a lot when we get that many vehicles with that high miles. We currently have a total of 16 vehicles that have at least 80,000 plus miles on it, with the most extreme case being a vehicle with 172,000 miles on it. So I think last year we replaced 3. Fortunately, due to an accident or two, there was, as Steve mentioned yesterday, a couple of vehicles that we were able to replace that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to replace. So if I'm looking at the math right, the $180,000 proposed there would enable us to replace, I think, about 6 vehicles, and possibly look at trying to do at least maybe one more out of our drug fund, and to help with that also. So the only thing that I have in remaining that I'd like to ask for, we have I think one of the best field training officer programs that we've ever had here. I've got 3 guys that have worked hard along with me to provide some guidelines and a pamphlet to put together a really good FTO program. But it's a lot of extra work on those guys, and to be quite honest, it's not a job that anybody really wants to volunteer for. So we currently have in our pay ordinance a 65 cent per hour pay to those that are certified FTO instructors. And these are the guys that I rely on to help form the new hires and those that come into our agencies to do things the way that we want them done and to ensure that they're doing them correctly. And my request there is to bump that to a little bit more of a competitive per hour pay, going up 15 cents from 65 cents an hour to 80 cents an hour for these 3. And also, if an adjustment's made on that ordinance to increase or to include incentives for an associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree, and that would come out to be, my proposal would be $50 a month for anyone with an associate's degree, $75 a month for anyone with a bachelor's, and $100 a month for a master's. So I think that both these will be very, very beneficial to our agency, and don't feel that our budget would take a major hit to give those guys a little bit more incentive to further their educations.
Hey, so to back up just a little bit, and we had this conversation a bit with the sheriff yesterday, is of course we know that when we came into office almost a year and a half now ago, that we had, at least I had, I think the commissioners as well, a hope that we would be able to increase the wages on our frontline people, the sheriff's department and the jail, along with our employees in general. We pay a rather low wage for what we get from our people, I think. Then we quickly found out after doing several audits that we were in a rather bleak financial condition, and so I'm not able to to do what we wanted. And then we enabled or enacted some revenue generating formats in anticipation of we'll build our reserves up, we'll get some money so we can pay the people what they deserve. An example is, I think the sheriff told us yesterday that our new deputies begin at somewhere around $18,000 less than what the city police pays for a new recruit. And so we have to face that. And then we start, I think, well, we're doing well, we're getting some revenue in this coming fiscal year to be able to make these adjustments. Then the virus hits, and we don't know what that effect's going to be until probably the end of this year. And so our strategy, I think, can be a reasonable one of we want to budget flat or low, anticipating that we might have a bigger hit from the virus than even we might guess we would have. And it would be good news if we were wrong in that we did not, hopefully we did not have to keep the budget down as low as we did. In other words, the virus will not affect us as much as we anticipated. That's a responsible way to go about it, because if we budget high thinking, well, maybe we'll have this revenue, maybe it won't be as bad as we hope, then we've dug ourselves down into a hole and we've got to try to dig back out of it again. So all that to say that we have room, we have the ability to 6 months from now, some period, re-examine and see what the benefit or what the effect, how much did the COVID virus cause us to lose revenue, put us behind revenue. And then we can readjust and say, okay, we can do this with the budget. We can address some meritorious requests for spending that we did not do because we were being cautious. And I think that's very dealing with taxpayer money. We have to be cautious. We have to be fiscally responsible and anticipate problems. And it'll be maybe we have a Christmas present at the end of the year and say we can do something that we didn't know that we would be able. Anybody have any comments about the budget in general?
Hey, Steve, if we look at our insurance money should start coming in when October, and then we should know from the first 2 quarters pretty much on payroll tax, which is probably going to be the state level. I mean, they're 40% of the people are laid off, so you figure your payroll tax is going to be down probably in half. So, but we should know by then. So if we kind of plan on coming back to this in October, would that be a reasonable?
No, I don't think so. And here's why. I think it's going to take us all of next year, we're only going to collect 3 quarters of the insurance premium tax. There's 4 quarters in the year, but when you look at our 4th quarter, the collection will actually happen in the fiscal year 22. So I think though, after 2 quarters though, we should have a pretty good idea of what this thing is going to yield. And the reason I don't think we're going to be able to tell from the 1st quarter is we don't understand enough about the cycle to know how often people pay monthly, how many people pay quarterly, how many people pay annually or semi-annually. So that application of that tax is only when that point of sale occurs. So I won't be comfortable with saying, here's exactly what it's going to yield until at least 2 of the quarters have gone by. So I think the revisiting happens sometime, after the beginning of the year, sometime in January. The other thing that we've received notice on is that Kentucky has decided to make available some of its federal assistance funds to local government. And they've set up a $300 million statewide pool. We don't know, to date, McCracken County has only been announced that we will receive $58,000. That was from a different grant, from a different grant pool. We're doing a resolution on that later in this meeting. And this other letter came out late last week or early this week. If we get significant assistance from that, I think that could very well be the thing that helps us through the revenue end of the crisis. But we're still on wait and see on what that shells out to exactly for us.
Anybody else?
Sheriff, I've got a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're 15,000 or 18,000 below a new recruit.
Yes, right now the average is $15,437.60 across the board. A new recruit, the total right now by 2022, if this is not, if no changes take place, will be at $18,621 difference in someone starting here and the other agency.
And the other agency being Paducah.
Correct.
Okay. And what is our starting pay?
$33,000. That's for a grade 1 deputy with no training. That will increase by $4,000 once they complete the Department of Criminal Justice training. They get that certification, they start getting their CLEF money, which is paid out of the general fund, but reimbursed 100% by the state.
So does Paducah start theirs at 51 and then bump them to 55, or do they start them at 47 and bump them to 51?
Now they're around the 51 mark right now starting.
Starting
And
before they even go to the academy.
Yes. And there's several different incentives. I don't want to act like I know every detail of that. I know that they've got a variety of different incentives that that number can fluctuate to be even more than what it shows as far as a starting pay.
All right. So then how many positions do we have that are in that category?
Current staff.
Is that every deputy sheriff, or is that?
That is going to be every deputy sheriff that we hire with no experience, no prior experience, don't have the academy, if or as a position for a road unit comes available. We currently trying to hire two. Due to this COVID, we're having difficulty in getting everything completed through KLEC. But we would have a total of 3 or 4 that's specifically in that category currently.
And I guess, is it the road deputy that's the position where we're kind of below? Is that what we need to be focusing on, that particular position?
Yes, that's where I have the best comparisons with other agencies, and where we have run into the highest risk, if you will, of individuals possibly seeking employment in other places due to that significant difference in pay. Of course, we have the statutory requirements here in the courts to protect the courts and to do all of our civil process. You all have worked with me and been able to provide the part-time civil process server. That's helped a lot to take some responsibility off the road units so that they can focus on proactive work and higher crime areas. But that has been the positions that have been vacated historically that we run into due to that pay discrepancy. So to answer your question, yes, that would be the first focus that I feel that needs that attention.
And how many, remind me again, how many road deputies we have?
We currently have slotted for 25.
25, and you want 28 eventually once.
Correct. And I mentioned yesterday, I failed to mention my initial, but again, just trying to show that I'm looking through every corner that I can to try to help to meet everybody in the middle. I believe that I have a plan I'm going to discuss with the judge on kind of some restructuring with our CISOs. I've talked to AOC. The CISOs they're not 100% refunded by the state, but it's very close. All of our CISOs, the 16 CISOs we have down front, I think we're slotted for $200,000 a year. And if we use all 16 to their full capacity all year long, they only cost the county about $48,000, give or take. So I have a plan in which I believe that we could take one of our full-time bailiff positions who is slotted to be at $28,000 and restructure our CISOs to still provide all the services necessary for the courts, and then take that full-time bailiff position to possibly look at bringing them out to the road. Now you've only got a $5,000 difference to go from at 28 to 33, at least on what the current pay is. I recognize that there will be some additional costs with that as far as, vehicles and things of that nature, but we are working and trying hard to pull every trick out of our hat that we can to be as efficient as possible.
So let me go back a little bit to road deputies. Let's say we got a road deputy with 10 years experience.
Mm-hmm.
What's about ballpark? What's he make?
Ballpark, he's going to be about what but he's going to be in the low 50s.
Are we
high 40s, low 50s?
Okay. Is that a position once he's got 10 years in and he's up at that level? Do we think we're vulnerable to losing that guy to Paducah?
The best comparison I can give you is just occurred within, recent weeks. And we had a 5-6 year officer that was able to move over and increase his annual salary by in excess of $11,000. So as you look at that pay, again, that overall average, irregardless of what their time in is around that $15,000 mark. So I would say absolutely that we're still vulnerable, especially under the current retirement system and people going off their high threes. And I think that's why it's important to keep you all apprised at the number of folks that we have that could retire within the next 2 years. And I hope I'm not giving a suggestive idea to anyone, but it would be appealing to be within 2 or 3 years of retiring, be able to increase your high three by $15,000 a year and finish out at a different agency. And, be quite honest, that's a concern that I have because, we've got a great staff right now. We've got, I think, some of the most professional officers on the street. And at the same time, I don't think anyone can fault anyone from trying to better themselves and do what's best for their family. So I just want to be transparent so that we can do everything that we can to guard against that from happening.
Okay. What about your clerks? Do they have the same issue?
Our clerk pay, from comparing to other agencies, I think is comparable, and not to exclude anyone, but I don't think that the any kind of a pay difference there really exists. I think that they're in pretty good shape, and with COLAs as as we go through, and possibly some of these incentives that I've mentioned to consider with associates, masters, and bachelor's degree, that that could offer some additional assistance there, possibly if they chose to do that, or we had an opportunity to hire someone that had those credentials.
And then what about your detectives? Are they?
Detectives are basically in the same boat, because pay structure of comparing,
Same boat as the road deputies, or the,
they are because of there's really not much difference. They do get the increase to go to detectives, but when you start figuring in the years of experience and shortfalls that they encounter with the pay differences, it still exists, and it's very similar. They're in a little better shape than the road units with the way the pay ordinance is structured, getting a 5% raise, but there's still a discrepancy there and a gap as you compare to other agencies.
how many detectives?
We have a total of 8 detectives, 5 in general investigations, and 3 in our drug division.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Bartleman, you started to say something a while ago and you had yourself muted. You still?
No, we're good. He answered the question. I thought he heard me because he answered the question as I was off for a few minutes because my computer locked up. What does it cost to put a deputy on the road? You probably mentioned that earlier, and I apologize. My computer froze up and I had to restart.
At our current pay, I may have to ask Pam to help me out here on this. We've had this discussion, but when you talk about everything from uniform to vehicle to the benefits, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam. I'm thinking it's around $100,000, give or take, on our current pay structure.
So that puts them on the road, but then what's the annual cost after that?
Well, depending upon which grade they're in, again, our starting pay on a grade 1 deputy sheriff is $33,000.
Okay, now if we were to hire, add a few deputies, do you have any vehicles that they could use without us having to buy a new vehicle for that position, or are the vehicles such that they'd have to have there'd be a new vehicle? I'm sure they'd be passed around, but.
Well, this is if this budget goes through on these proposed 6 vehicles, that's definitely going to help a lot. If we were fortunate enough to receive some additional manpower, we definitely, be as strategic as we could in passing them around and getting the most bang for our buck out of what we have to work with.
So if we were to hire 2 new deputies, you probably would need 2 more vehicles, or could you get by for a few years on passing them down?
Again, it would be hard for me to say just right here off the top of my head. I think getting the 6 that we have, we could rotate some vehicles around. I would mention though that I feel like that it is in this order. Not that I wouldn't be grateful for either one, but I feel like that we have to first of all look at the pay discrepancy and work on moving that in the right direction. I say that simply because I think it's important to take care of those that are here serving and have been serving. And I think that even if you all told me today to hire 3 additional deputies, we're going to have, as competitive pay as we possibly can with other agencies to be selective and to try to hire the most qualified officers. So I feel like that we need to first and foremost work on bridging this gap, and then as time and money allows, to start infiltrating in that additional manpower to hopefully over the next 2 to 3 years be able to accomplish both of these goals that I have, and hopefully you all share in.
You've been sheriff now for 2 years. How many deputies have you lost to the city in those 2 years? Just one?
Yes.
And that was just recently you lost one, right?
Correct.
How many former deputies now work for the city police department, if you know?
We have a total of, there's a total of 3 currently working. I think historically there was a total of maybe a half a dozen or so. Some of those have retired since they've gone over.
So right now, there's 3 former deputies who left the McCracken County Sheriff and went to the city over the last however many years.
Yes.
Hey, anything else from the sheriff? Hey, we're done with the sheriff's budget.
Can I ask one more
time?
time to clarify, Judge, the proposed COLA this year?
Yes. But 2.3, is that what we landed on?
Yes,
Steve.
2.3.
2.3. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, we're done with the sheriff, we'll move on then. Thank you, Sheriff. I do want to, I don't know if people watch this thing or the word gets around or whatever, but I would like to have an opportunity to talk to him and explain, I guess good intentions don't buy a loaf of bread, but we do have I think the commissioners join me in hoping to find money and praying that we are not as devastated as we could be by this virus. And of course, we believe we're heading, seeing the end of the tunnel, starting to see some light from the virus, but at the same time, we could get hit again if we don't take the precautions that we need to be taking, even as I think we're coming out of this thing. So, but if you'll pass on, I'll try to express myself to your folks as well, and perhaps the commissioners could also. Morale's a big factor in a job. As you know, I've had 9 years in Lewisburg, 1 county and 8 in the city, and so particularly to me, and I have a bachelor's degree in law enforcement, so I know the job, done the job, and I did it at a time when it really was an attractive job. Now, because of some things that are going on in our society, but so we're well intentioned. We're trying to get there, and I think we'll make it soon. Anybody else, anything else for the sheriff then? All right, we'll move on to the general departments then.
All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Would you like me to stay on or?
Not necessarily. If you
Okay.
want to, stay on. If not, catch you later.
Okay. Y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
The first thing I wanted to share with you was this little calculator I use that should be nice and visible. For every dollar we add to a salary, when you consider workers' comp and the fringe benefits, for a non-hazardous duty employee, it adds $2,800. For a hazardous duty employee, it adds $3,022. So in the case of a starting deputy, if we put in at the starting cost the entire $16 an hour, it costs about $61,000 for that entry level employee. And over here, where we typically start most of our non-hazardous employees at $12 an hour, that total cost of that employee, when we figure health insurance, pension, all the fringes, it costs about $43,000. And then they in many cases have overtimes on top of these. So our true impact of our employee, when you say, gosh, $16 an hour doesn't sound like a lot. It on the back end, when you add everything in, the equipment, the car, everything, it chunks up pretty fast and has a big impact on our budget. I'm gonna stop that one and go to all others. All
So-
right.
So it's not a simple math of 15,000 times 25 deputies.
No, there's going to be a little bit more to the calculation because of the costs that reoccur with mostly with pension. That's the single biggest impact.
Hey,
Because-
Steve,
Yep.
when I was on the school board, we kind of we done bonuses twice a year for teachers instead of giving raises where we didn't have to pay. We didn't have to pay a lot of the extras. So that might be something we look at until we get our finances in better shape. If we can do something like that for some of our employees, including the sheriff's deputies.
Pam can chime in. I don't think we are allowed to do bonuses.
That is correct. We can't do bonuses. And any salary we paid anybody, regardless what you call it, you're gonna have to pay retirement on it.
Got ahead of you, Jeff.
All right. Right. These are all the what's left to go over. Besides putting, as Eddie called it, the jigsaw puzzle. We're going to do that at the next workshop. Pam or Vicki has sent you an email on that. I think that's next Tuesday. We'll put the jigsaw puzzle together. But these are the collection of small budgets that are mostly under the judge executive's office, and include some other things. And we'll roll through these. Please stop if you see something you want to discuss. Current budget for the judge's office, which funds the judge, myself, Vicki, and Kara, some supply cost and travel reimbursement. The total increase is 1.66%. Most of that coming from the COLAs that are granted to the salary line items. And then same with the commissioner's budget, or what we call the commissioner's part of the budget, the pay issues. And then we have some sort of, in that thing are more of some of the miscellaneous items that we pay for. This is also where we keep the budget for cars. We used to do all of the cars for jail, sheriff, general fund would be in this line item. We will likely see that number decrease relative to other years as we push the cars we buy for the sheriff into the sheriff's budget. Any question about these first two? They're pretty flat and pretty similar to next year. Pam has a note here. CAECO did waive their fee for the coming year due to the COVID crisis.
What are the other membership dues?
Both of the associations, that the Judge Association and then the Magistrate Association. It's those two.
They charge more than CAECO, evidently.
Why does the deputy judge not get the COLA that other employees get?
Say that
It's-
again.
He's
How does-
asking about your salary. It's in there, Judge. It just looks a little weird. The previous number, I had done a different calculation in the current year budget because there was in February was the time when Steve's adjustment was to be done, and That's built into this year's budget, but that did not occur.
Yeah, I did not get a COLA last year. We were going to do my annual adjustment in February, but we were busy doing other things. We'll discuss that at some point in the future.
Well, let's discuss it now. Why is it shows you making 76,440 to 76,602, so less than $200. That's less than $200 more, 0.21% increase. I didn't follow that.
The 76,440 that was in the budget, that did not actually happen because he did not get his increase in February. So his current salary is really 74 and change. So from 74 to the 76 in the 2021 budget is the 2.3% COLA.
When I came on board in last year, when I met with you guys, we negotiated the starting salary, and then I was to receive 5% in February. So I didn't get a COLA last July when everyone else did, and then we were doing things in February that the timing just wasn't good for that. So I don't exactly know how to go about solving that one. So we first had the crisis in February, and then we're in the current COVID crisis, and we're telling everyone hold your salaries or hold your budgets flat. And I didn't want to show or reflect, that nobody else can get anything, but we were going to adjust mine.
Okay, well,
Okay.
And I don't remember, I do remember, I guess the first time I talked with you was over the phone. I was in a parking lot in a vehicle somewhere. In order to bring you aboard, that start low with your salary, whatever you do, you have to go to work, and we would increase it annually for a period of time. I don't know what that was, but so that's one of the factors that's in play. But we can circle back on.
If it was in the budget for February, why didn't it automatically take effect?
Because you didn't act on anything. It was not automatic, as with all salaries, you have to make that adjustment. In February, we were doing insurance premium taxes. Did not seem like a good time to be doing that.
Thank you.
And then we rolled right into the COVID crisis in the budget, where we're trying to keep things as flat as possible.
Okay, we'll talk more about that later.
Okay, moving on to the next little section of the budget, you will see the statutory contribution to the PVA. We get a letter from the state that tells us how much our contribution to the PVA will be. That's of course cash. We also provide a building, phone lines, electricity, janitorial service. We provide all that in addition to the statutory contribution. City of Paducah also makes a contribution to the PVA as well. this Board of Assessment, this cost that's for the 3 people that the judge in the fiscal court has appointed when there is an appeal. That board has been active this year, much more so in the past. A couple of things moving into the county treasurer's office. The salary items reflect the current employees we have, including the HR position, which we added in the current fiscal year. We do not have any part-time individuals in the department. We are showing a little bit of an increase in data processing and software. I plan to, or would like to this year, add HRIS software and also PACE, timekeeping system. We do not have a timekeeping system in the county. The sheriff has one, the clerk has a nice system, but the rest of the county, we don't have anything. So to improve our timekeeping and our payroll system, I'm proposing we get something in the coming year. So that's that increase there. Tax compliance, this line item, this is a company we use, and not a whole lot, to assist us with finding people that have not paid their taxes. I don't know if we're going to spend any money in that line item next year, because I don't think they're finding very many, are they, Pam?
No, they haven't found that many, and the actual contract was up this month, and we chose to not renew that.
Okay, so we will save some money on that line item, but frankly, we weren't spending that much money. Any question about the treasurer's budget? Moving on, data processing development, that's how we pay for all of Caleo, all of the equipment we purchase, everything we do for the county on more than just, this hits other funds. We pay for things that occur in other funds. Law library, this little bit, that's a statutory requirement. We roll into planning and zoning. We have 2 employees we pay for there in planning and zoning. Programs, I'm sorry, this keeps rolling. Program support, this will be a future item. We'll ask you to consider. This is how much we give to the airport for as part of their budget subsidy. This does not include the car tax. This includes just the straight up cash support. It has the number we have penciled in is a flat number, but that number has been flat for a few years. There may be some needed adjustment coming with that. And the city of Paducah budgets a similar amount for that. Paducah Economic Development, that is the traditional amount. We have been paying them. I did receive a word from the city that due to the crisis and the restrictions of revenue, that they are going to lower their contribution to GPED by $25,000.
No kidding. Well,
Yes, and am I safe in assuming you want to match what the city is doing?
I don't know. Probably had about 20 seconds to think about that.
The next line item down, I think we can probably start dropping from our budget. This was another line item called Entree Paducah, whereby we were giving 50,000 that went to GPED, and they were using it for entrepreneur activities. They have since ceased that department. That more or less became Sprocket. Health Sprocket was originally being paid for at PED, and they're totally out of the budget now. A future decision will be the scholarship program at the college. We put the traditional plug number. Of course, this column is through March. We did pay them 75,000. We'll have to make a decision for next year. Any question about this section of the budget we call economic development, because it has more than just economic development in it.
So now I guess would be the time to, we have sort of not necessarily gone hand in hand with the city on joint projects, but for the GPED contribution, it's been $250 for some time. County's $250, city gives $250. They are our designee for economic development. County's indicating they're going to go to $225, dropping 25,000 contribution to GPED. I'm satisfied more so now than sometimes in the past with GPED's performance. I don't think if we did that, I don't think it'd be a reflection of we're dropping 25,000 because we think we're 25,000 less valuable than we were last year or something. It'd be on our revenue side that we've got to make some adjustments and no reflection, in my mind at least, as to GPED's performance. That'll be the time to talk about it. If anybody's got anything to say.
Well, I mean, there is, I'm happy with GPED. I do feel like they kind of ignored the Teletech issue and could have solved that issue for us, and that would have saved us $33,000, which would come in handy right now. Maybe we'll get that fixed in the future. It would probably hard for me to suggest that we should pay more than the city, particularly in light of the fact that I think the city gets clearly in the Teletech deal, the city got the preferential representation on that issue.
Anybody else? Do you think want to stay with the 250, go to 225 thoughts on it?
I kind of got to agree with Eddie on that. I don't see us paying more than the city, especially when we're trying to scrape around and come up with money, maybe to possibly give some money to some of the deputies later on this year. Maybe we cut back a little there and a little in some other places we can come up with some money.
I don't know. I assume we've got a little time to think about it, but I guess that news surprises me that the city is reducing theirs. And I guess I'd want to talk to Bruce about what that's going to do to his budget. But he does have the opportunity to go out and create more money by creating more members.
We'll mark it as an area we need to look at.
Right, we will move along if there's nothing else about that.
You know, I had one question, is just $600 on the law library. Remind me who gets the $600? And I remember it being a statutory requirement, but who do we write the check to?
Nobody. No money is ever spent out of the line item. It just is a line item that DLG requires us to have.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
We were while we were talking about airport, we were on a meeting yesterday and I'm convinced the airport's going to need more money. I mean, they've taken a big hit. But I don't think anybody knows how much yet.
What about the $1 million they got in their grant money they got from the CARE?
I think that's all. It was my perception, at least, Bill, that all that's for design work, not for operation work.
CARE Act
yeah.
money they got is for design work?
Commissioner Jones is correct. They got a $2.4 million grant from the FAA that was for design and work associated with the new terminal. And there were some costs in there that needed to get done, but there's certain things the federal government pays for and certain things it doesn't pay for. So and it required a 5% match. So the city and county each contributed approximately $140,000 to that effort to pay the 5% match, which was around a total of I can't remember the total match. And then there were some disallowed costs related to the terminal design that we split that cost of. So, but that $280,000 that came from local government did not do anything for operations. That was all related to design and engineering work that needed to be done. So like everything, while the airport does not directly receive tax money through property tax or occupational taxes or anything like that, a significant part of their income comes from passenger activity, like parking lot fees, car rental charges, those things. And that's what's impacting their budget now as ridership on planes in March and April plummeted. So they have met with us a couple of times to alert us to that problem. And I'm sure that problem is not totally solved. And at some point in the future, we're going to hear where $86,000 will be insufficient for their survival.
Steve, didn't they get CARE Act money? I thought there was another grant they got, some CARE Act money to cover some of those losses because of the virus.
Yes, there was, but it did not come close to covering what their operating losses were.
It was a significant amount of money, though, wasn't it? How much was it? Do you remember?
I don't recall offhand, but the math, there was a significant shortfall in the math.
It did announce yesterday that if I'm stating it right, the federal government is for 2020 waiving the match requirement for the additional design work, so that we have been relieved of some obligation to try and raise match money for 2020. And my hunch is the federal government's done that because they know we're going to have operation losses that we have to cover.
Are we ready to move on to what we call the courthouse budget? This is largely for maintenance and janitorial.
Let me ask one more question of Eddie on the airport. How much do they think their shortfall is going to be?
I didn't pick up a number from that, but they were down to one flight a day. And they'd already made a decision to cancel from 3 to 2 before the virus. But if you anticipate, I don't know, I guess I'm guessing if they're going from 2 flights to 1 flight, their income's being cut at least in half. And I realize those are subsidized flights, but there's some revenue that gets generated from the airport per flight.
Is the money they get to subsidize the flights, is it based on per passenger, or is it based on they getting granted a certain amount of money?
I think that's a federal, just plain flight. I think that's an $800,000 subsidy. I could be wrong, but that's my best guess is that's a flat amount.
So they get that whether they have 1 flight or 3 flights?
Well, and actually they don't get that. The carrier gets that money.
Okay, yes, sir.
But what they're not getting is they're not getting the, car rental income, the parking income, all of the ancillary income that would flow from those passengers is not flowing.
Did they get any PPP money or anything like that?
You mean the CARE Act money Bill was mentioning?
Yeah, to help them with their payroll and operating expenses.
It's my understanding they did, but I don't know the amount.
I think we're ready to move on then, Steve.
Okay. Budget for maintenance and custodial flat. The little increase you see is totally associated with payroll costs associated with the COLA. The reason this number goes down this much, I think it's still left over from we had a more expensive employee that retired, and we replaced him with a newer, less expensive employee. Next budget down, building and electrical, planned 4 full-time positions. There are currently 3 full-time positions there. Traditionally, between the road department and building and electric, that traditionally would have been 3 full-time clerical positions. We've been literally limping along for a couple of years with 1 clerical position for 2 departments, and it's just not working very well. And what it comes out to is, due to the transactional activity of the permitting office, it leaves our road engineer doing payroll and other kind of work, and that's just not the best use of his expertise. So I am proposing to add an additional full-time position in that department that did not previously, it existed previously, but was not in the current year budget. And we'll ask you to make that decision at a later time, but I've got a holding spot in the budget for it. Also, there's been some discussion lately about code enforcement and how we do that. Well, the budget is this: we have one part-time position. That's Danny, and then he hits 2 line items when we hire contractors. So that's this one we call property cleanup, and this one we call dangerous house. We use this first line item up here more for mowing picking up trash and debris on lots when we can't get people to do it. And we use this line item down here for actual demolition. We've torn down this year 3 or 4 houses. More than that get torn down. We have pretty good luck of Danny convincing the owner of the property that they need to do it. But we run into situations, and I know you guys got a couple of rounds of emails from concerned residents about, hey, there's a burned out house. How come nothing is happening with it? The simple and easiest answer is there's not a lot of resources put behind that effort. We're spending a total of about $45,000 a year toward that end.
Steve, you and I have discussed the possibility of taking a look at the fees that we charge for these services and others. Have you had a chance to do that?
Yes, I have. I will send you those results under a separate cover. So for this line item, the building inspectors and the electrical inspector and the office assistant, we can, and their cost for running their office, the statute allows us to charge enough to cover the cost of the department. And so those total costs are less than this number we see reflected here, because you have to back out the code enforcement. That's about 45,000. So I think we're bringing in around 135,000 in fees, and we're spending a little over $200,000 to administer that. So the theory goes, those that are their activities because they're building buildings and developing, that they should bear that cost, and that cost for those inspection and permitting services should not be subsidized by the community as a whole, even though they traditionally have been.
How do our fees currently line up with the city fees?
So we were higher. Last year, the city, I don't know how close they came, but they made an effort to equal our fees. They raised theirs up to our level.
In a document you're going to send us, are you going to propose any increases in those fees?
Yes, I am.
So this is a fee for when we tear down a house, or we're gonna charge it back against the property owner?
No, there's 2 things going on in ways of fees in this. One is just the straight up what we charge for permits for building and electric. We don't really call what we do in code enforcement a fee as much as it's we file a lien. We are not aggressive at all at going after our liens. They just sit on the books recorded, and we hope at some point when those properties transfer, the liens get cleared at that time. And I don't even know, the number is so small that we get back on an annual basis. I don't even know if Pam could quote a number of how much we get back from people that settle liens.
No.
It's insignificant.
You know, like you said, some of them sit on the book for years. So, I mean, someone could all of a sudden want to sell the property, and then they'll pay off a lien that's been sitting on there for several years. You just never know.
Gotcha.
And some we have big liens on, and nothing happens. They just continue to own the vacant lot after we've torn a house down. The only way we can recover that cost if we decide we're going to hire an attorney and foreclose on it. But often in those cases, you're spending $3,000 to get back $3,000. So usually nothing happens. Not always, but usually nothing happens.
Well, I've spoken with the county attorney about us getting together and trying to devise a plan where we could make some gains on that, both in clearing some properties that need to be cleared and financial gains by not spending more than it costs to for the gain to the county. And so the attorney is a nice young fellow. I've known him a while. And I think we'll get that done. We've got a civil action we can do. We'll go through criminal court if we need to. People have to talk about them what they should be doing. And we're actively looking at some properties right now that people have to live in neighborhoods, very nice neighborhoods, whether that's nice horse and some even dangerous property that need to be addressed, and having one, our entire department for looking into these properties and getting them cleaned and all that. Our entire department is named Danny, and he's part-time. So, we'll have to look at whether we should address that. Maybe we can find somebody named Luca Potsky or something like that to help us to put some muscle behind getting some of these properties cleaned out.
And Danny does a good job too. He's always responsive whenever we get calls and pass them on to him. He does a good job of responding.
There's a lot of work for one part-time guy. And I really think we're falling short on helping for years and forcing. And that's the other thing is, we're talking to Steve, we need to upgrade and put some more meat on the ordinance about people keeping the properties clean, keeping them safe, when they're abandoned, and cars piled up in the parking lot, and thrown up, and moms living in the house, that sort of thing. We'll get to that, I think, shortly.
Steve, regarding fees, this doesn't have to do with this item, but are you also looking at the fees we charge for zoning changes and things that come before the board, and alcohol fees? Are you looking at all the fees?
Yes, we're reviewing all of those. I'm reasonably satisfied what we get back on planning and zoning. Our alcohol fees are very low relative to peer cities and counties around here. We don't charge enough for those permits compared to other cities and counties.
You will send us a document at some point in the next week regarding that.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Emergency management budget. As you know, we run emergency management with just 2 full-time employees, the director and the assistant, and a whole bunch of engineers and or volunteers. And that effort costs us a couple $100,000 a year. Money very well spent protecting the community. For something we're going to have to get back on, that's our planned subsidy number next year for 911. That would not include that number presumes no change to the current system. So that's the county share of what the various cell phone fees and landline fees don't pay. And then we have a couple of, after that, a couple of statutory contributions that we make.
Where are we? So we budgeted 425 last year.
Now we budgeted 250.
Oh, we did.
Yeah. We are going to spend about, it looks like about 600,000 this year. We budgeted with the hopes that there was going to be system reform.
That's right.
And then that did not happen in this fiscal year. Really needs to happen in the near future. We ended up prioritizing some other things first, and found out the complications of trying to, under the statutes, to devise a system that is neutral with regard to cost recovery. It's just hard to do. But we know that left unchanged, the system left unchanged, of the county's share of the subsidy to operate 911 will be $776,000. We purchased that service from the city of Paducah.
That money's paid to the city, and what's the formula that we use to decide how much we pay?
So it's based on this. We throw in the fees that we charge on landline. The city has a fee and the county has a fee. That fee is different. We throw that in the bucket, and then we take the CMRS money, and that's basically the cell phone money that is collected by the state and given to local government, and that's less than the landline fee and significantly so. And then that produces a number, and then we divide what's left based on call volume. The city has a little higher call volume than we do. And it's call volume at the sheriff's department, obviously the most. The second most would be animal control. And then everything else drops off down to nearly nothing. And that's our number that goes into the subsidy.
That 776 estimated for next year, is that before or after the landline fee and the cell phone money?
That's after.
So in addition, there's another probably $400,000 or $500,000 that goes into.
I will get that to you. Yeah, easily. The department is well over $2 million. So yeah.
So I think we were looking at an ad valorem tax and then decided we couldn't do it because of the 4% cap, right?
Yes, we were going to get cap clipped.
So it seems to me at least a possible plan for the future that nobody would be excited about is just simply to do the 4% for 911 for a period of 5 years, and you get to $500,000, or you get to nearly $1 million. You go back to the judge's plan of just doing an ad valorem.
The challenge with that is it creates then the amount of dollars we use to support the general fund, the jail fund, and the sheriff's fund then becomes locked in place. And as inflation and pension and everything else takes larger portions of those, the taxes we collect from property taxes then don't increase. So that becomes a fix for this item, but then creates a structural problem for the rest of the budget over time.
And I guess that would establish an organization and at least a deficient stream of revenue for the organization that then the city and the county would have to still subsidize. But it should create some relief to the city as well as the county, which would make them interested in other areas, I guess. It's something to put on the table with them in other areas of revenue.
We can look at that. We got to make sure if we're putting something like that on the table to entice them that it's got to work to at least an equal or advantage to us.
And that
For our
plan
justification
is
for the
some-
insurance tax. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, you know, our options and plan and what would work best and all is being approached through meetings of with myself and Doolittle, the mayor, city manager, the 911 folks, and trying to decide where all that would best be handled and what method is most appropriate and that sort of thing.
As I recall, part of the justification for the insurance tax was the need to cover 911. And when we did our analysis to show our financial condition, we included the 911 cost as part of that. And I'm not sure where we're at now, but I think we need to see if our insurance tax revenue will help cover that before we go and put another tax on. Because again, our analysis on the need was based on, in part, on the 911 cost.
Well, it's a complicated problem. I don't know if we can we want to get too far down in the weeds in this budget session, but we do have we've got left still after we get through these departments. We've got left the outside agencies, and I suspect it's going to take some time.
Yeah, it is a complicated problem, but we're still in the same spot we were 2 years ago, in which the 911 system will never have its own stream of revenue. And I think we all know that to develop the type of safety and 911 system that we want, it does need its own stream of revenue. It will always be at the whim of the city commission and the county commission and their ability to work together on that project.
Hey,
That's all.
Ready to roll on through? When we get done with the EM,
Yeah, so that's the EM budget, and then the 911 budget, and the one after that is and the reason they get kind of out of order is because of the chart of accounts that we use from DLG, and so the sequence is really over here with these accounts. I kind of hide them for this purpose because it's a lot of information, but that's why you tend to see there between EM and animal control. Just has to do with the way the chart of accounts fall. Animal control, traditionally a 3-person department. We reduced it to 2 last year, and the way we sort of picked up how we can keep that effective has to do with I'm sorry, that keeps rolling. We answer their calls in the office. So instead of them dealing all day long with calls, we do the dispatching out of the judge's office with Kara, and that's given the animal control officers themselves more time in the field to deal with frontline problems. Besides the single biggest line item in the budget is the Humane Society. Of course, that agreement is now expired, and we've been on month to month with them. They are interested in redoing that. That one has to just work up to the top of my priority list here pretty soon, and make some decisions about our care for animals. So that's what that partnership this year has cost with Humane. And I'm proposing we keep that budget again relatively flat, but could change if and when we change the Humane Society contract. This is a budget we split with the city. It again is based on call volume, but it turns out to be pretty close to 50-50 anyway. So they pay their required share for that. Just like the next one down, landfill, we split this small budget that mostly has to do with some evaluation and testing, a little bit of maintenance cost that's mostly goes for bush hogging and mowing. And I think we are creatively figuring out how to even lower this one by inviting some haying to be done for at least a portion of it. And then this is where we also budget for and split with City of Paducah spring cleanup expenses on what is called Free Dump Day. That has been, it was in April, it was postponed. I don't know if there's a new date for that or if we will even see any of that expense in the coming year. Litter abatement, this is completely reimbursable. We use a couple of part-time employees and we primarily use prisoners. We have not been picking up trash for the last couple months because of COVID, because of our labor supply. We couldn't get prisoners. So in the short term, we're going to have some part-time employees that we will charge against the grant because I feel like we're falling behind in some areas on roadside litter pickup. Statutory contribution here to the Soil Conservation District. And then moving on down, we have a blank. This is how much last year you decided to give. We're going to have a separate conversation about outside agencies going forward, but that's why you'll see some of these blanks. Pauper burials. I can never remember why that's not in the under the coroner's budget. I think it's just where pauper burials come in the chart of accounts. That one's doing fine. Over time, that has become less expensive because most of the pauper burials are really pauper cremations. So that's done at a little bit lower cost. This indigent services line item right here, that's nothing we control. That's the court system orders certain services fiscal courts are required to pay for. We budgeted, and this was purely a guess, we guessed or hoped that number wouldn't be bigger than $35,000. Through March, it was $48,000. And we're going to guess or hope it's around that, but that number could very well end up and will likely end up higher and closer to $50,000. Any question or comments about those?
So the indigent services, that's when the court appoints an attorney
I don't think it's attorney appointees. I think it's some other services.
I think
Pam, Judge,
it can be both attorney and then the psych evaluations. I think it can be those two things.
That's right.
the judge says that's correct.
See, with the Soil Conservation District, I don't think, do we get a request from them for that, or are we statutorily obligated to fund that, or what do they use their money for?
That is a statutory contribution. We get an annual letter on that. And we pay that, I want to say quarterly, Pam.
Actually, it's done monthly. It's part of the, it's in those recurring court orders each month. So yeah, we pay it out monthly.
But we're required, that's a requirement, we have to pay that, is that right?
It's a statute that we have to fund it, yes. However, I don't believe the dollar amount is stated anywhere.
So we don't have to fund it at that level, we just have to give them some funding.
I believe so.
We'll look into how that number, because that number never seems to change of why it's that amount.
And can we get an accounting on what they use that money for too? I've had some concerns expressed about some projects that they,
I believe they're on the agenda for one of the meetings. I'm not sure if it's the next one or the one after.
June 8th.
To give a report, because that's part of the statute, is they have to also give us a report.
I know they do some education grants and for kids, and they do educational things to educate people. I was just wondering what else they do.
Wayne Elliott will be here on June 8th. There's our annual budget for Carson Park. This is where we paid Tony. We pay for him out of Carson Park. He of course is in charge of maintenance for the county and works a lot at the courthouse as well. This is a seasonal laborer position. We have someone currently in that position, and the seasonal person works out to be what, Pam, nine months?
Yes, 9 months.
9 months out of the year. And so that is what's going to assist us with, we're going to pick up a little bit more maintenance at the landfill area when the bridge goes in, and we're going to get a lot more people in there, and we'll need someone to do a little bit more maintenance, empty the trash cans and keep it looking good relative to the amount of traffic we're going to see in that area.
Does he also do stuff at the other parks, Ridley Community Center and Heath?
Yes, all over. Carson Park, Heath and Reedland.
I think they've done a good job with that, because at one time those things were really ignored, and I think it looks a lot better now, and I think it's cared for much better than it was previously.
I agree. Both Heath and Reedland are better cared for, and those properties look pretty good, and they are available for rental. We see a lot more rental activity at the Reedland Community Center than we do Heath. And then of course we have quite a bit of rental activity that goes on at Carson Park. We have another section of the budget after Carson Park called, it's county park stuff, where we lump in projects, where we lump in different utilities we pay for at like Reedland and other areas. We do budget a little bit for refunds. Sometimes people don't use it and we have to give them their refunds or they get their deposits back. So we have that little line item for that. And then just some general items we buy for the various parks. After that, this is another airport support thing. We levy a tax on rental cars, and then we collect that and we pass that directly through to the airport. City does not have a tax for that, but we collect that countywide, including in the city. So we don't get the benefit of that 150. We pass that straight along. Transportation of school children is designed to be a pass-through expense for children at private schools that ride public buses. We get reimbursement for that from the transportation cabinet. Here's another one of those blanks that we need to talk about and fill in for Paducah Area Transit. That's the amount we gave them last year.
And that was $7,000 more than we gave them the year before. That was a new gift.
I have a sheet on coming up when we get into that discussion that shows what we previously gave them.
Yeah, one time, Eddie, we gave them about 20,000 a year. We gave them 15, we increased it by 5 so they could establish another early morning route, I think, for transport workers to Teletech, I think, if I recall that correctly.
Yeah. Well, that Teletech revenue agreement expires in February, so maybe the city will want to renew that.
Have you done any research on that, Eddie?
Yes.
Yeah, good question. Who would have thought it? We've got Patsy in there on the outside agencies. Going to get to hopefully in a little bit.
We have some line items that we're moving and putting into debt. It's not that we won't have some of these things. We're moving them to Fund 99. This line item here, I'm proposing we do away with. Previous fiscal court took on this energy project to save energy in the courthouse, in the jail. It largely does what it was designed to do, save energy. And then a part of that was this annual optional thing to have the company come back and review all of our bills. And if for some reason we weren't saving energy, that was part of the guarantee that they would pay for the improvements that we made. And talking with the company, they have not ever paid out on that. The energy report has limited value, I think, to the county. It adds up all the thermal days and compares it not to actual past, but to actual specific peak numbers and compares it to that. I don't think we're ever going to demonstrate where they think we have increased any energy. So I don't see a lot of value to this report, and I don't want to do that anymore. It just costs $13,000. The project did save money on energy, no question about that. I just don't think we're ever going to be able to demonstrate where it's not saving us, and therefore the guarantee kicks in. Any questions about that? So next line item, audit to audits we pay for the ones we're required to do. This property taxes paid to city obviously has to do with some economic development project where we owe the city some property taxes. I don't know exactly which one that is.
That'd be curious.
It's Teletech, I think.
It's Teletech.
Yeah, I think so.
But of course.
Yeah, there's $36,000 in property taxes that the client does not pay. The city and county split the taxes. So the majority of that money is to reimburse the city for what they paid the school district. That's where most of the taxes go on Teletech. And then the city does also get its 25 cents per hundred, and we pay half of that. And then we get half of our 10 cents per hundred paid to us. But the city does not keep $19,000.
All right, so is that by agreement or is that by obligation?
In the Teletech, well, I think both. In the Teletech lease, for reasons I would have never agreed to, is that they don't have to pay property taxes. But that does not mean property taxes are not due. So therefore, the owners of the property have to pay taxes, the property taxes. The county and city were only exempt from property taxes when it's for governmental use. So on buildings like this and other industrialized buildings we own where we lease, there are taxes. But in other instances, we get the occupant of the building to pay the property taxes and not have them fall back on us.
All right, so is this a situation where Jonathan Perkins calls over and says, all right, I've done the calculation, here's what you owe us? How does that money actually get exchanged?
He sends an invoice, but it has details showing the property, what the taxes are and what our half is.
Yeah, so the total tax load for both city and county taxes that are due on it is about $36,000 a year.
So if we took that out of the budget, well, is that the only piece of property that's in the budget like that?
I think so.
Genova wouldn't be in there too?
No, in the Genova deal, the tenant pays the property taxes.
So we're paying 50% of the taxes due, is that right?
50% of the taxes due, and most of that goes to the school district.
And what percentage of those taxes are city taxes?
Well, 25 cents per hundred,
And ours is 10 cents.
right?
So we're subsidizing the city tax then, right?
No doubt.
Wouldn't it
I'd
seem
like,
that if the city would pay their 25 and we pay our 10, wouldn't that be a more reasonable way to allocate that?
here's my suggestion. Let's just take it out of the budget. And when Mr. Perkins sends the invoice, we'll deal with it out of the general fund. I'd rather it require 3 out of 4 members of the fiscal court to authorize that money, given the fact that that agreement's going to expire in February without some action. I don't think we ought to put it in the budget. I think it ought to come separately after.
Well, Eddie,
There's a vote.
it still has to be in the budget. I still have to have somewhere to pay these things out of. And of course, the court always has the approval on all bills that are paid. Nothing gets paid without coming before you guys for approval. But it has to be in the budget somewhere for me to even pay it out of. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it's a done deal and I do it without your approval.
Yeah, I know, but it's just whether it ends up being in the accounts payable list that, or I guess it depends on which one it's the list that gets more scrutiny. If you
Well,
can-
We could
We can
run
do
it
it.
through as an order.
Yeah, we can do a court order for it.
That's what I'd like. Okay.
Okay.
Can we do a court order on all the fees that we pay to the city? That fee, just so we know how much we're paying them. How hard would it be for,
It would be hard to do it that way.
I mean, how many fees do we
And,
pay? 911? This,
Well, most, you do see like some of every time, we split a debt service, there's an order we actually read. I don't think too much really goes through on bills anyway. I don't know, Pam.
Well, I mean, there's the 911 and the GIS. And there's some other things that come up like once a year that we share with them.
And they send us money on the Humane Society, don't they?
Yes, and then
Yes.
there's a batch of things in our budget, like animal control and landfill, and I'm sure there's some other things they pay their half of.
So, but I think this one would be nice to have as an order since we've got that issue. Thank you.
I'm sorry, and the touchiness here, it keeps rolling. The rest of this that's in general services have to do primarily with our insurances. Most of these things, building and contents, errors and omissions, most liability, that all goes to CAECO on the all lines fund. We did get our renewal. They're pretty flat. It was pretty good for the coming year. So that's all these insurance for vehicles, professional liability. That's all that. Then we do have a little line item. We do make refunds when there are errors on tax forms. That's how we pay those out. And as you see, we budget very little in miscellaneous, but throughout the year, we just don't have a category for where things go. You do see court orders for all of those things when that happens. And then we pay everything in the general fund in terms of the fringes, Social Security, retirement, and insurance is all in this section. And then also we have a workers' comp charge, and that's also part of our insurance packages that we offer for the employees. Section 27, these will be some new accounts we're going to add. This has to do with, you'll see it in your monthly financial. It's the column that we call economic development or economic assistance. We have spent a little bit of money out of there. We only had mostly incoming activity into those, but when we want to spend money, and we did this year a couple times, we need to develop some chart of accounts. So that will help us better manage those next year. And by the time the final jigsaw gets put together, Pam and I will put some numbers in there. Rolling down, state detention, that's juveniles. Evidently through March, we hadn't been billed for any juveniles. That billing is kind of, it's not a set monthly thing. They come sporadically throughout the year. I'm sure we'll get hit with some bill from the state for juvenile detention, and we will pay that. Fund 78 has to do with the transient room taxes. This is despite what we budget in this column for next year for payments to the convention center, sports tourism, the CVB, and our debt service, we only spend out what we take in. I will occasionally get called by like the CVB and say, I don't agree with your budget number. We have a higher number, we have a lower number. whatever this number turns out to be that we collect, we're going to pass on to the CVB and to the Sports Tourism and the Convention Center Corporation. We have seen, as you see, go through the financials, significant softening of transient room taxes for March and April. That obviously will continue into May. And as we get into some of the better paying months, the summer months, we hope we're in recovery by then. But it will, where my warning comes is in this line item, because that is a future thing that largely will be used for debt as we buy as we develop soccer fields. And this one could happen too. That 686 that we're planning on going in there, it was 685 for the budget this year. We use that for debt service on a number of joint projects related to the Convention Center and the Carson Center. And so if for some reason that account would run low, those debts were general obligation, and we would have to come up with some dollars from the general fund to put in there to make those payments. 99 is the all the debt service accounts, and it looks like we're going to have about 2.2 million in existing debt service. Obviously, something will likely come up during the year with sports tourism, and at that point, we'll have to do an amendment to the budget to incorporate that into our budget. And that concludes the everything else part of the budget.
Steve, we're going to have some savings, aren't we, on the bond payments? I think if I remember from the audit report that the bond on the jail and sheriff's office expansion that expires, we paid off in January, and I think there was another one paid off within the next year or so. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's going to save a couple $100,000 a year.
One of them is like, I don't know. I don't have that right before me. It's, yes, there is some, as we pay those off, we'll see a slight reduction in that budget.
I think the payment on the jail, sheriff, I think it was 290,000 this year, and we'll pay about half that next year. Will be paid off in January, so that's a pretty significant savings.
I don't have that right before me.
Anything else on the budget overall? We still have the outside agencies to do.
Can I ask a quick question on the Humane Society?
Yeah.
Are we in negotiations to try to reduce our costs in that area? It seems to me we're paying a lot of money for 5 stalls to handle dogs. Where are those negotiations headed, Steve?
Well, in our discussions with them, they want an increase, and they want to decrease some of the services they offer, namely emergency vet service. The problem is, frankly, we don't have a lot of other options short of opening your own shelter. There's not a competing shelter to go to say we would rather pay you guys. So
That's been sitting for a good while, and Steve, of course, is correct. They want more money, and provide less service, but frankly, I think we've been so swamped with so many other things that we've just been working under the prior contract. I think that contract actually expired a few months ago, but we've been going on under it, and we'll need to get that back on the burner as soon as we can. Any other questions on the budget? I don't know about you folks, but I've been looking at that waterfall behind Commissioner Hardeman's head for 2 hours, and I need to take a break. Is it your pleasure to recess for like 10 minutes, or it is noon? Would you want to break for lunch, come back, or are you able to? You want to break for 30 minutes?
What do we like?
We like the outside agencies that took us like 4 weeks to get done last year. And I figured we get done in 30 minutes today, but I expect we got another hour, brother.
And we have a grant resolution we desperately need to get in because we're bumping a deadline.
How about we take 5 minutes? And get it
Yeah, I'd
done?
rather take 5 or 10 minutes and finish it up.
Everybody good with that? Let's do 10 minutes.
All right.
That good with everybody?
Yep.
All right, we'll adjourn. It's, we'll call it 12:05. It's adjourned to 12:15. Be back. All right, thank you.
If I unmute, you'll hear me chewing on my potato chips.
That's okay. We're all eating.
And Motrin, because it's giving me a headache.
All right, I gotta listen to the message. So I gotta mute for a minute.
I'm sorry. No.
But people we have the paperwork down here. If they're doing inspections, those 2 days, how are they supposed to get the title to do the inspection? I said you went on there.
Okay. We'll make it a luncheon meeting from here on, looks like.
I'll let you think on it.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Judge, would you mind if we knocked off this number D first, this resolution for the
Sure.
stimulus fund, then we can send Steve Urban off to do other things.
Okay, let's do that. And so we need a motion. I don't know that we've put out any detailed information about it, but it's this resolution for.
I move we approve the resolution.
Pardon me?
I make a motion we approve the resolution.
I heard a second. Commissioner Jones?
I'll second, but I guess it's got, doesn't it have to be read? Or is it not in order?
Just the resolution. So I think all we gotta do is just vote on it, right?
Vicky wrote in order for the resolution, if somebody
Oh.
would read that, or if we can get the clerk to read that order.
Okay. Is it just what's on this agenda workshop thing?
Yes.
Okay, it is hereby ordered that a resolution be adopted and enacted for the purpose of applying for the coronavirus stimulus fund awarded to McCracken County in the total amount of $58,080.
So move.
Second.
Right, motion second, any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries. All right, so we're on to the outside agency funding. Everybody got the packets of all the information and what we gave last year to those various agencies. And we had, I don't know, I guess a logical way to start maybe is with the, they call themselves the Unified Arts Group, River Heritage, the Symphony, the Geyser Center, and Carson Center. I don't know if your packets were rubber-banded together. Those four agencies totaled, I think, $44,000 request. Let's see, last year, we gave, we didn't make a contribution last year. I think they unified last year. They were not all together, so that we not recall if we gave some of those entities, one or more of those entities, some money or not. Have that for me. What they were asking. Oh, and just to, for the river, if we make a contribution, they're asking for cumulatively 44,000, I think is what it was, and they're proposing that we go 1,500 to River Heritage, 7,500 to Symphony, 5,000 to Geyser, and 30,000 to Carson Center. Any thoughts?
I'm on the board at River Discovery Center, and I know they need the money, but I don't see us giving a lot of money out on these things with our monetary needs and like we've been going through all this. We've got the sheriff's department that needs money. We've got I'm sure the clerk's department would love to have money. I mean, we need to take care of our own before we take care of the outside agencies if we can.
I agree with Jeff. We just, until we get our deputy sheriffs and our deputy jailers pay in the right spot, I think this is something that's beyond the scope of our government at the moment.
Now, those comments, those are in general as to all outside agencies, or you're talking about just this unified group?
Well, that's going to be.
Well, right now, yeah, unified group. I mean, I think there's some agencies on here we really need to support. The baseball, softball parks. I think that's. I mean, that's part of us, and I don't even mind supporting Brooks Stadium, but when you get past that, I'm starting to have a problem with a lot of them.
Steve, why isn't the Conservation Service this list? Why is it listed separately in the budget?
What did you just say?
I was wondering why the Conservation Service is listed separately in the budget at $30,000 to the, and why it's not in this part of the budget.
There is nothing statutorily required about any of these. We have never.
We have a statutory amount we're required to give the Conservation Service.
Yeah, as we said in the prior session, we'll look into that number of why that number is not moving. I have a sense that it's a number that was given to us, but theirs is a required. None of these are required.
So I hear from Mr. Jones, Mr. Parker, if I understand right, then you're in favor of not providing any money to the Unified Arts.
Something I'd love us to be able to do, but not yet.
Not at this time.
And so I'm trying to recall, and Steve, if you'll help me, I guess, are we just, we're going through and were we intended to take any formal action on this entire proposal today, or are we just discussing and then we're going to bring it up in a meeting later?
Let me share something with you. So some Vicky work here and Pam. So the first sheet shows this column way over to the right, and that here I'll make that a little bit bigger. This column here all the way over to the right shows how much we ended up giving this year. This is don't pay attention to this. Focus on, I think, the things up here that are core and that you know you're going to do. Support the airport, support GPAD, and come to some decision about the community scholarship program. And then the ones that fall sort of below this line and going here, I think I would rather have you focus on a budgeted number that we have available, and then we can allocate it. So if you take these guys out up here and you look at just what we gave starting with Senior Citizen Center, these are the amounts that we gave in the current year. And then when we go down though, these were their requests. So so the requests that they make are based on, Vicky sends them a form and they fill out a form. We don't tell them how much money we have available. We just, they have a sense based on a number of issues of how much they should ask for. Very frequently, you will see it's based on sort of what the historical give amount was from the fiscal court, and some vary. Like Keith has traditionally received about $10,000, and they asked for $20,000. But last year, I gotta rotate these around. You decided to give them $8,000. So I think what might make this better is if we decide on a number, and then we can decide how to back allocate them on any number of criteria.
Do we know how the virus is going to affect the baseball and youth leagues and stuff? I mean, a lot of these organizations nationwide are canceling their seasons. Do we know what they're going to do this year?
So I heard from the city that the West Kentucky Association, which includes many cities and counties, voted to begin practicing, I think later this month, in the month of May. We did see in the governor's order that non-contact youth sports were allowed to resume on June 15th. So it without having talked to anybody other than the city, it sounds like they're trying to salvage some summer, fall season going forward. Ordinarily, we see these youth baseball, softball things begin in the early spring as soon as it turns nice. That obviously has not happened yet.
I talked to Lone Oak, which are in that WKSBA, Rich Hall's house yesterday. And I'm pretty sure he told me the date they were looking at starting was June the 20th, their season. So that's what they're planning right now. Those would include Reagland and Heath, Lone Oak, Reagland and Heath.
Yes, correct.
All right, so your suggestion, Mr. Doolittle, is to come up with a map and a budget, and then determine how to spread that out. So our amount, let's see, our amount last year was the 488, is what we gave.
Well, outside of airport, GPED, and scholarship, if you don't include those three, all the other agencies together, it looks like we wrote out $77,437. Am I right about that, Pam?
Yes, you're correct.
Of course, there's the idea that we may join the city and giving GPED 25 less. Whether we want to throw that over into an outside agency allotment, perhaps we would want to do that.
I bet you the city changes their mind on that. So I don't know that I want to approach it with just a number and divide it in a percentage. But I obviously, well, I'm for putting the community scholarship back up to 125. I can tell you that.
Well, if we, I usually have to find a really strong reason to disagree with Steve, and I guess I haven't found one yet. It's been with us a while. But if we work off of that 77,000, have that as a frame of reference and then go through these things individually and maybe see where we end up. Would we all, is there a disagreement, I guess, that we do the airport subsidy and we fund GPED at least 225? That would reduce by 25 like the city's doing. And Mr. Jones is indicating he'd like to go back to our 125 to the scholarship program instead of during this fiscal year, we cut it to 75,000. But the idea of Mr. Jones, and I really can't disagree with it, is I think that program is a solid program, a strong economic development program. I think from 125 to the KCTC scholarship program. Any thoughts?
I agree. I think we need to go back to the 125 on it.
There was something that I don't know how much time you gentlemen had to get into these folders for the different agencies, because one of the senior citizens that was
I didn't get that one,
Oh, you didn't get the senior citizens?
but I have heard that there's something interesting in it. I want to hear what you're about to say.
Well, everybody, I think that made a request, got the same form to fill out. And there's a line 23 in those forms. And the question on line 23 is list any capital improvement projects you expect to undertake in the future not associated with this request. The director of the Senior Citizen Center stated that due to the, among other things, said that due to the construction of the aquatic center, we have been notified by the city that the senior center may have to relocate as they will not be able to help with the funding of our current building. The building is owned by the city and they are unsure on the plans for it at the moment. We will not be able to afford the building on our own, so we will need to either build or buy a new building. Both options will be costly. And one of the reasons I bring that up is, of course, as we know, the aquatic center has been put on hold for a time. But whether it will remain on hold, whether it be built, I understand the city's intention is to go forward with the project at some time. And so the Senior Citizen Center is asking for $25,000, which is what we gave them this past year.
And we only gave them $4,375.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the year previous they were given 25,000. We cut it back to 43.75, as you say, last year, and so this has come up, and frankly, I didn't see it till just this morning, and so I've not been able to make any other inquiries or find out about that. I did, and along to throw in the mix, I did see that they, at least this year, let's see, for the year ending June 30 of last year, they had revenue over expenses of $1,100. So obviously it's going to affect their bottom line if they have to move out of that building.
Judge, does your form show what they've got in the bank? I thought we were going to try and make our form different so that that these agencies had to tell us what they had in the bank.
There's a lot of paper in here. I tried to get the highlights of each one of these and I ran out of time going through them in detail.
Yeah, I don't think we changed our form. I'd like that to be on the top right-hand corner. How much money do they have in the bank?
We're in the senior citizen home located on H.C. Mathis Drive.
Yes.
Well, how would they, why would they have to move because of the aquatic center?
City owns the building. They, according to this, they said that the city told them that he would not be able to continue. Well, let's see. Did I not read that part?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean,
due
their
to the
location's
construction-
a long ways from where they're building that pool.
No,
Probably half a mile.
it's a financial reason. It's due to the construction of the aquatic center, we've been notified by the city that the senior center may have to relocate as they will not be able to help with the funding of our current building. It's not that the city is going to put the aquatic center there. It's that the aquatic center, I guess, the aquatic center costs will prohibit the city from continuing to allow them to reside in the building, or perhaps the city is probably keeping the building up, maybe paying for maintenance and that sort of thing. I don't know what expenses they're talking about. So essentially, they're saying that they're not going to have the money. They don't believe. Well, it said that when the city told them we have been notified by the city that the senior center may have to relocate as they will not be able to help with the funding of their current building. So they're losing that city funding. Maybe. They use the word maybe. So does that, so they're asking, what did I say, 25,000 is what they're asking. That was what they received, not last year, but the year before, perhaps multiple years before.
According to the last tax form they filed, the Senior Citizen Center had 1.8 million in assets. And I think most of that's cash. I don't have the full report, but if I remember from previous, there was well over $1 million cash in their account.
Yeah, I'd really like us to change our form for next year so that they have to actually go through that thought themselves before they ask us to take time over a $25,000 request that they have to write down, here's how much money we have.
Well, I think we did ask them for their
I don't see it on the form.
I think that we sent out a here's to not that we can't change it, but I believe we put out a copy of the form that we were proposing to use and ask anybody if they had any suggestions on anything else you need to take out or anything like that. But
Well, I guess maybe I missed it, but I know this came up last time, and I would like them to have to write that. I see where we ask them to attach their Form 990. Did they attach their Form 990?
yes, it's in the packet. You don't have that?
I don't have the senior citizens. I've got everyone but that one. Everybody.
I don't have that one either.
No.
I don't either.
I think that one came in a little late. I'll email Vicky and see if she can send it out to y'all.
Does the 990 show how much money they have?
Net assets on line 22 for the current year, it says $2,013,000 net assets. Prior year they had 1.955 million.
Surely that's not cash.
Yes, it is. Most of it is cash.
Well,
Now, how do you know that? I'm not doubting it, I just don't.
On their
know.
990, it tells them how much cash they've got.
It does? Where's that?
Where does it say that?
Hold on, I'm looking for it. See if we got an email on it.
Well, I was looking at that, I see that the current year on the 990 shows expenses of 1.017 million. And assets of 2.013. And so I guess that tells us at the end of the year, they will have just under $1 million in assets. Does that sound right, Pam? Is that how that works?
Yeah, they don't own the building, so I mean, they don't have a lot of assets other than cash.
Well, I mean, I don't know that you can really tell from the 990 how much cash they have. I would be shocked if they had that much cash in the bank.
Me too.
Okay, so yeah, on page 11 of the 990, it shows that they have cash investments of a large dollar, but those funds may be restricted grant dollars that maybe they can only use for certain things. I don't know.
So are ours.
Could be their food program. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
The food program's funded through the area development district, I think.
Well, it flows through there, but those are state dollars, but that's not all the money they get, I don't think. I think some of their funding comes elsewhere.
Now, there's a line 1 on page 11 that says cash non-interest bearing. It says end of year 126,000.
Yes, and then we're talking about that line right below it where it talks about cash investments, savings and cash investments, and what that could possibly represent.
What was their interest income?
I'm looking. They have investment income of $61,000.
Their unrestricted net assets, according to the report on line 26, 27 is 1.6 million. That's their unrestricted. So that's not money that's has any strings tied to it.
I don't see how we can, well, I would not be in favor of funding in this a level based upon this information.
It's 1.6 million in unrestricted, 291,000 restricted. So they've got 1.6 million and they can do whatever they want with it, like fund their program.
We got deputy jailers that need a raise.
Any more discussion on the seniors citizen center? It sounds like at least the proposal is a 0 there.
So
We'll just go back, going through this. We've got the chart there that Vicki put together. We just flow down through there. It's got the previous year and it's got this year and the previous year's funding. The next one on there is the Crackington Youth Soccer Association. We gave them 11,875. And the previous year, we got 25,000. They're asking for 15,000 this year.
Steve, who does the maintenance on the soccer fields? Do we do the mowing and stuff on that, or do they do that?
They do it. We mow some of the area around it, but they do the actual taking care of the surface.
I would probably be okay with leaving them alone with what we gave them last year.
I would feel the same.
Okay, so they asked for 15, we gave them 11,875 last year. And the argument against giving them 11,875, same we did this year.
I'd be-
Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
I'd be in favor of keeping it the same. I assume they've had some savings because of the absence of spring soccer. So I think they could probably handle staying at the same.
Well, I'm gonna roll down here through these things, and you know, you can stop me or talk about whatever you want to. But the next one then is Reedland Farley baseball, softball. The last donation they got was $66,875. They were given $10,000 the year before, and they're asking for $15,000 this year.
I think the same on that one also.
I do too.
Could I make the recommendation that for some reason you didn't hold the three equal, Heath somehow ended up with more than Reedland and Lone Oak last year.
Does Heath pay their own utility bill?
Heath and Reedland, I believe we own those properties and pay those utility bills. Lone Oak owns their facility.
I agree. We ought to make them all, three of them equal.
If we lump them together, we gave Reedland Farley $68.75. We gave Lone Oak $68.75. We gave Heath $8,000. And we gave all three of them $10,000 the year before.
I was thinking the reason the Heath was more because they pay their own utility bill, but I could be wrong on that.
No, it's just the way the averages worked out. I've got how we did it, and it was just Heath.
I think we're going to go Heath 68.75.
He just got a bigger score last year. But so Judge, you're saying we basically take those three together and add them up and divide them by 3.
So that would be 72.50 each.
That sounds perfect.
I'm good with that.
$72.50 for each of those. Anybody, anything else on that? Okay, I guess the Lone Oak Tennis Association, we gave them $2,250 currently, and the year before they got $4,000. I didn't
Judge?
see. Yes.
We took them off of the list this year.
Okay,
They
that's fine.
didn't appear on the list.
They didn't appear because they didn't apply.
I don't know that they've ever applied. That was something relatively new that came up within the last 3 or 4 years. So we just took them off of our list.
Okay. I don't think they filled out the form asking for anything. I don't see it. They did. So they didn't ask. There was 0 on that then. Okay. Brooks Stadium. 5,625 was this year, 7,500 the previous year. They're asking for 10,000. And somebody asked earlier the question, what's the impact of the virus on baseball, softball? I have no idea. I guess they're probably not doing anything at Brooks Stadium. Shouldn't be. Or at any of these other ball fields.
Yeah, the Chiefs have canceled their season, so that was a major tenant, and the American Legion no longer plays there.
Well, they say that they've got some capital projects they want to do during this downtime, and to include purchase of mowing equipment, improved sound system, and additional netting installations for better visitor safety, and additional chair seating, install new AC for booths.
Well, the one thing you got to remember on Brooks Stadium, and which I'm kind of partial to that one, but they still have the same upkeep pretty much whether they're playing or not on the fields and stuff like that. They have to keep them in really good shape. The mowing's still there and taking care of all the field and surrounding areas.
And I guess it could conceivably be even more important because they won't have the income of the season.
I know they returned, I think it was $56,000 for player fees and other fees to sponsorships.
Does the city provide money to the stadium?
If I'm not mistaken, Judge, the city mows the outside and they also pay the utilities.
Their budget, they had 39,500 for the cost of hosting the Chiefs, and they won't have that expense. It has a total expense of 47. If you take the Chiefs away, they don't have as much expense from that. I'm sorry, that's their revenue projection. So they'll lose. I'm sorry, that's not expenses. It's 39,000 they lose. Revenue.
That's part of that 56,000 they had to return to people.
Well, I'd be inclined to keep them at the same level.
So we think possibly their expenses are going to be similar, but their revenue, I guess, is going to be zero.
Correct.
We gave the Reed and Lonoke and Heath just fields $72.50 each. It makes sense to give them the same amount, $72.50. They're asking for 10,000. That'd be a couple thousand more than what we did currently. Real close to what we did the previous year.
You look at their proposed budget, their estimated cost for the Chiefs was $34,500. And a lot of that they won't have. For example, they had expenses for umpires, uniforms, player expenses, equipment. So they're not going to have some. I mean, they can always use the money for maintenance. Or for some improvements out there. I mean, I've got no problem with that, but their expenses aren't going to be as high as what, because they use some, I think some jail employees to help with some of the maintenance out there, to do the mowing and all those kinds of things.
Well, they did. I think that might have ended. They had one or two decide they'd rather go run off than mow grass. But maybe that'll be reinstated. I don't know.
I'm good with either one, what they got, or you can raise it up, whatever.
I think we can keep it where it's at.
I think that's the thing too.
keep it where it's at, 5625?
Yep.
All right, 5625. And we've got Pat's. We did 6875. Currently, we did 25,000 the year before, and they want to reinstate it at 25,000.
All
I
right.
think, I didn't get down in the weeds on that, but I think that maybe some of that is this veterans ban that Charles, well, I've lost his name now. But anyway, the director at Pat's was wanting to reinstate this veterans ban.
Arthur, what?
Arthur Boykin.
Yeah. Well, and he's a very likable guy, and I don't want to disappoint him. But here's the deal: is this is primarily a city function. I don't think they really have any routes from the city to the county, and even if they were to say we got a route to Teletech, that's a route from the city to the city. Not to mention the city didn't want to buy the Sportsplex because it was in the county and they had to go past the Sportsplex to get the Teletech. So there, I haven't said Sportsplex in a while.
Noticed.
Curveball,
Say what?
curveball.
Yeah. So, it's true that the cities in the county and city folks pay county property tax, but they don't pay the occupational tax or the insurance tax. We collect about 4.2 in property tax. I assume of that, the city residents pay less than 2 million. And we spend most of that on running the jail. And I guess I just have a philosophical problem with us contributing to city functions generally, particularly, I just have a problem with the county being asked to pay for city functions. And I view this as a city function.
I think they go beyond just the city. I just can't recall what areas it is, but I do believe Cracking residents outside of the city can make arrangements for a low cost, I want to say like $1 or something. Fair to,
Eddie, they do come out in the county. I see just every morning come out here, they pick people up and take them to work. I don't know if that's subsidized through the state to pay that or if their general fund pays that, but they do some functions in the county. But as far as I know, they don't have any bus routes that make stops in the county. I think they tried that, but it was less than successful.
Yeah, they call those the fixed routes, and I don't think there's any in the county or significantly outside the city limits. And then, but they do have their point-to-point service that they have that is available outside the city.
Well, maybe if the city agrees to share revenue with the Teletech building, I'll feel differently.
Eddie, have you studied that issue?
so
What do you want? Cut it completely out?
Well, if you're interested in, I mean, you guys were looking at cash balances. According to their audit, they have cash, their current cash as their June 30, 19 was 1.7 million.
Take it out.
That's in your packet if you want to look at it.
I don't suppose I guess they're maybe getting ready to start back. I wouldn't think there's been any bus routes for several months since the virus. I don't know if they kept their staff on completely, if they laid them off, let them get the unemployment, what happened. I think it's a heavily subsidized industry. So keep the 6875 or cut it completely.
I guess I just have a hard time saying that we need to fund this primarily city function.
I have to agree.
Sounds like their reserve is better than ours. I mean, I don't know what a resident from Ragland, what benefit it gets from Pat's. Maybe it gets one. Maybe it'll be explained to me later, but it feels like this is something that you enjoy because you live in the city.
Well, the bank account thing's a big factor, but I do think probably that Ragland resident, I think, would call Pat's and say, I'm a senior or I'm disabled. I don't know what the qualifications are, but I need a ride to my doctor. I need a ride to the grocery. And I think, but I can't be held to it. It would be wrong. Come get them, charge them $1.
And something like that, some fact like that would change my mind significantly. I guess I just don't know.
How about this? How about if we put it on, I hate to put one on hold, but I could get a hold of Mr. Boykin and find out what that is.
I would be okay with that. I don't want to cut them out if they are offering a service like that.
And what I'll do, I'll put in a 0 for right now, and I'll get a hold of Mr. Boykin. I didn't see, he did write in the description, but I'll tell him that's our heartburn is what's the benefit of county residents outside the city. Of course, we got to also keep in mind in these things that people inside of the city are county residents also. And so we represent them as well. But I'll get with him and find out something. What about CASA? In 21,875 this year, 45,000 previous year. That's the outfit that helps the family court primarily to investigate and be with abused children, find out family situations. Is it safe for a child to be in a family? I personally think that's something that ought to be a state paid, because it's the court system, but it's not. It's a valuable service they provide. I hate that the county is has to fund it.
I'm kind of close. I'm kind of close to that one too. I help them on a lot of their fundraising, and I know they've taken a major hit on the fundraising. So but I agree. I think it should be a state-sponsored thing, but it's not. And we're dealing with kids, and most of them are from McCracken counties.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to keep them where they were last year.
That's at 21,875. They asked for 25, so they backed off 20,000 off of what they got,
Yeah,
previous year. And I've not heard anything from them. They know where I am. But.
In their 990, they had unrestricted assets of $440,000. Would be cash in the bank.
So I heard somebody say, I think Commissioner Jones said 21,875, keep them where they were. That's just 4,000, 3,200 or thereabouts less than what they're asking for. 21,875, everybody good on that?
I am.
Okay. 21,875. We've got the community career endowment. Currently we gave them 1,250. The year before 5,000. They're wanting 5,000. Got the year before.
I don't remember what that is.
That is the, Fred Paxton donated $1 million and set up an endowment that was, I believe the funds are used largely for scholarships for African Americans in the community. Bill Mitchell's been either the longtime executive director or board chair. I can't remember.
Now it comes to mind. So why are we doing this?
They say their population serves primarily economically disadvantaged African American citizens in Creighton County. Service programs consist of job bank, scholarships, and educational assistance, mentoring, tutoring partnerships, educational enhancement programs such as ACT prep seminars for high school students.
But they have the endowment gift. I guess what's the logic behind us doing this? Other than we've always done it.
Now, I'm looking to see what their bank account is.
Their revenue is 48,000.
Well, I see total expense or total income up there 69,800, and at the bottom total expenses of 71,735. So they're $1,000 more expenses than revenue. I guess this endowment gives them 48. Gave them 48,000 this year. I don't know if that's a recurring amount. 46,000 from the endowment the previous year.
I think it's a great and noble program, but I'm struggling to figure out why this is a tax dollar program.
I think we help some of those who would qualify for this in the scholarship program, the community scholarship program. So I think it's kind of a double funding in a way.
Well, these are probably high school kids, I would guess. With part of ACT prep.
I think it kind of competes with the community college scholarship program. We're going to look at it that way.
Oh, it's the ACT prep actually does pique my interest. So the net effect of us not giving the money is they're going to have less income because they're making $48,000 off their endowment. What's their expenses are 71. I'm fine keeping them where they were.
See, they put a flyer in the thing that they had a scholarship program in reception at West Kentucky Community Technical College. April of last year, and that's of course where the community scholarship program. But my guess is this is for younger kids, not college age.
Well, the ACT prep be something that the would not be competitive with the other.
Here's their mission statement: to provide remote workforce diversity, improve community by assisting low-income and or unemployed individuals find gainful employment, further education, improve social and emotional status, to provide youth intervention services that promote success in their education and career pursuits. Ain't more like more for the teenage, whatever. I hear somebody say, keep them at the same.
I'm good with that.
I mean, if they'd had the $5,000, they would have had more income than their expenses last year.
If we give them half of what we did the year before, and they get 2,500, that's half of their ask. Then we can find out more about it next time.
If we could give it to $2,500 and designate it for the ACT prep.
But,
Their budget, they estimate ACT prep is $4,000.
Yeah, I saw that.
And their mentoring program and tutoring is $7,000. The cost of their banquet is $25,000. Paxton scholarships, $12,000.
what cost of the banquet's 25,000?
That's scholarship awards banquets, which is the scholarships.
No, the scholarships are below that, $12,000.
I think that banquet is a major fundraiser for them too.
They don't show any revenue from the banquet in their budget.
Is the $5,000 pass through from the COMM Foundation to NAACP is not shown. Not sure what that means. You want them at 2,500, Judge?
That thing where you see the bank, the only place I see banquet is where it says scholarships / rewards / banquet. I don't know what that means. But they spend 25,000 on banquet. I guess not knowing anymore, I'd be good with giving them half of what we have. We gave them $1,250 last year. The year before, gave them 5,000. Split that roughly, give them 2,500 this year, and they will know what our concerns are for next time. What do you think? Sound unreasonable?
I think the ACT prep is probably worth it. So
I'm good.
Yeah.
Are we good at 50 or 25?
2,500.
2,500 is what I was throwing out. Good with that. Okay, Paducah Civil Air Patrol, we gave them $937 last year, or this year. Had 3,500 the year before, and they're asking for to reinstate that 3,500.
I believe him.
Not where it was this year.
Pardon? I didn't hear that.
I would leave them at the same. What they asked, what did you say they asked for?
3,500. That's what they got the year before, or in FY19.
Yeah, I remember being impressed by the program, but not $3,500 worth. I think keep leaving it the same.
I think it has a small number of participants, and I just remember when they appeared, we said, if we don't give you the money, how will you fund it? They'll say, well, we'll just do fundraising. So they apparently have that ability and have sponsors that can cover what they need.
Yeah. It did sound like economic development, though, what they were doing.
So I'm hearing keep it the same, 937.50.
I favor that.
Correct.
All right. Bracken Civic Beautification. I'm not sure, but I think my wife might be on that. I've better lay low on that. She did suggest $250,000 would be seemed appropriate.
What?
We gave them $625 last year and $1,500 the year before. They're asking for $875 this year. $250 more we gave them last year, or this current year, and just over half of what we gave them the year before, 15.
I think we need to give it to them.
Any other thoughts?
What if we can get them to adopt the landfill trail as one of their projects? Maybe we give them more.
Here they got Johnny Appleseed rides his bike out there and throwing flower seed. Some guy named Jones.
I got to check on my flowers this week.
So 875, is that what here?
Yep.
That's their ask. Let's see, Veterans Bank.
That one also was removed from the list.
Okay. Got nothing from them. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yes.
So
Did anybody keep track of that math?
I did.
500 and 1,187.50.
So the only ambiguity,
Well,
the
but
only
that,
ambiguity we have is PATS, we're not sure about, and GPAD, we're not sure about, right?
How much was it, Pam, after we took out the top three?
Okay, yes, just those others add up to $65,437.50.
So we actually cut those $11,500 out of our smaller things.
Yes.
Does that include PATS?
You have 0 for PATS is what y'all had said, so.
Okay.
And our budget amount for them was it 77?
That's what the funding was for current year, 77,437.50.
Yeah.
So
Do we want to entertain possibly, let's see, we gave him Pat's 0, and I was going to check with him. We had a 25,000 ask. If we did 12,000, just under 12,000 would be at 77 if we were. Or you want to just find out some more information?
I'd rather you find out, because I'd rather save the money everywhere we can, because towards the end of the year, I want to look at the deputy salaries again.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, I'll find out something on tax. Anything else we need to do? We done. You think of anything, Steve or Pam? You good? All right, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye. Those no, we're adjourned. Thank you.